Hello again, everybody. This is the AT&T wireless back office installation video. This is the second video of 3 that you're required to watch prior to doing your AWS WBO installation. First things first, you'll want to call OneSource to discuss the antenna placement based on the photos you already sent. Keep in mind the primary and secondary coverages. The first is the single lane, single COD speaker post, and we got two coverages here. The primary coverage is 120 feet leading up to the COD, which is the speaker post or where the menu board is, and the second is about 20 feet beyond the speaker post or menu board, as you can see here. The second scenario we have here is going to be a single lane dual COD speaker post. That's where they have two speaker boxes and one drive-through lane. As you can see, there are two here. The primary coverage is 120 feet leading up to the second COD and also 20 feet beyond the second COD. Next is the signal propagation, so just keep in mind the way the signals propagate when you're installing these. These are directional antennas and they should be line of sight through the entire drive-through. They cover 120 degrees left and right, as well as 20 degrees up and down. You want to angle the antenna so that it's pointed about 4 feet up from the driver's side of the curb. This is where the handheld will be at when they're taking orders. Okay, now let's focus on the installation of AP and antenna of AP3. The antenna for AP3 will need to be in the back of the building. There should also be a line of sight throughout the entire back of the drive-through. Just make sure there's no obstructions. If there are, you'll want to call OneSource immediately to discuss the next steps and what actions to take. The antenna should be high on the wall, out of reach if at all possible. Centered behind the COD or menu board is a good start for a location. The actual AP will be mounted inside and above the drop ceiling. You will use the RF cable to extend the antenna if needed. These will be provided in the kit shipped to AWS. As you can see here, the AP is mounted above the drop ceiling here. And you'll need to run a Cat 5 plenum rated cable to this area as well. Again, if the antenna is a little too far from the AP, you can use the 25-foot RF cable that's shipped to the site with the kits to extend the antenna. Let's take a look at a few good photos of antenna placement. In the first photo, you can see the antenna is high on the wall and as well as behind the menu board. This is a pretty good picture far away, showing the entire drive-through and everything. On the second photo, you can see the antenna is high on the wall. In this case, you can see the menu board is off to the right just a little bit, and that's fine. It's just because of the layout of the building. The antenna still covers the entire back drive-through area. In the last photo, you can also see the antenna is high on the wall, behind the menu board. Now on APs 2 and 3, you'll want to make sure the RF cable is connected to the bottom right ports 5 GHz A. And on APs 3, you sometimes will have to mount the antenna to a freezer. If it's a brick out exterior of the freezer, that's fine. Go ahead and mount the antenna. But sometimes there's a metal out. There's like a metal freezer that we have to mount the antenna to. In these cases, we've provided a metal freezer mounting gasket kit. So that's on page 16 of your IDG. The kit is comprised of 4 small sheet metal screws, 4 lock washers, and 1 gasket with removable paper. First of all, you'll want to clean the freezer where the antenna is going to be installed. Remove one side of the gasket paper and place it on the antenna bracket. Remove the other side of the gasket paper and apply the silicone sealant to each of the 4 holes. Stick the gasket to the back of the freezer. When it's straightened in place, go ahead and secure the mounting bracket using the 4 screws and the lock washers. Once that's complete, you'll want to silicone the tops of these screws to prevent water from penetrating the walls of the freezer, and then mount the antenna to the bracket. Okay, moving on to AP2 antenna installation. There are a few things to consider during mounting of the AP2 antenna. The antenna should be on the side of the building, centered between the rear corner of the building and the side entrance. You want to make sure you have a clear line of sight throughout the drive-through, just like AP3. The antenna should be high on the wall as possible, preferably 7 to 12 feet. Also, again, if there are any obstructions, call OneSource immediately to discuss the options and how to proceed. Make sure that the RF cable is plugged into the bottom right connection of the AP. That's the 5 GHz port A. Now let's take a look at a few photos of antenna 2 placement. In all these photos, you can see the antenna is high on the wall, kind of in between the rear corner of the building and the side entrance. And again, just make sure that APs 2 and 3 antennas are connected to the bottom right port, 5 GHz A of the AP. Okay, now that you've seen where and how to mount APs 2 and 3 and the antennas, I want to discuss the drilling of penetrations for the RF cables to go through. Before you drill any holes, the technician should check and double check to make sure the penetration is above the ceiling on the inside, but below the awning on the outside. The technician should get a verbal okay from the site manager, which will make sure they know what we're doing and where we're doing it at, so there's no complaints later on. The antenna should be mounted with aesthetics in mind, so make sure everything's neat, clean, and professional. Any exposed cable runs along the edge of the building should only be used at last resort, and the RF cable should penetrate the building as close to the antenna as possible. All penetrations should be sealed with fire stop on the inside and paintable silicone sealant on the outside of the wall. Keep in mind that we should never penetrate through the walk-in cooler. For AP3, the RF cable typically will run over the top of the freezer in the scenario where a freezer is in the way. Okay, next are a few photos of wall penetrations and antennas mounted correctly. For the first, you'll see that the wall penetration is sealed with silicone and the penetration is directly behind the bracket. This is ideal because once the antenna is mounted, it covers all the penetration work. As you can see in these photos, there is no messy cabling or visible penetrations. The next few photos show the penetration sealed with fire stop on the inside of the building. Okay, once you have APs 2 and 3 installed, it's time to replace the head-end 8-port switch with your new DLINK 24-port switch. Keep in mind that the replacement of this head-end switch will take down all services offered by AWS. This includes the store's ability to process credit cards and cashless transactions. With some planning and prep work, it's possible to minimize the downtime for the store's cashless system. The McDonald's switch network configuration utilizes VLANs for all ports, so it is critical that all connections plug into the appropriate ports on the head-end switch for all systems to operate properly. The DLINK 24-port switch ships configured with an identical VLAN configuration as the 8-port switch that you are replacing with it. All connections are one-for-one mapping, for instance port 1 to port 1, port 2 to port 2, etc. In some cases, there is a Cisco 1841 router located inside the NMD cabinet. This will need to be relocated prior to replacing the head-end switch. There is a whole section on this portion of the installation on pages 16 to 18 of your IDG. I will not go into detail on this video as this is a pretty rare occasion. There will, however, be a separate video created for this portion of the installation. Okay, moving on to replacing the head-end switch. First, you're going to want to give the manager a heads up that the cashless system will be down temporarily. Usually let them know 15 to 20 minutes. You can let them know 30 just to be safe in case it's down a little longer. You should always wait for approval prior to proceeding, so do not unplug that switch before they tell you it's okay or we're going to have some problems. You're going to want to remove the D-Link switch from the box, attach the provided rack ears. Go ahead and remove all the screws from the 8-port switch out of the rack with the exception of one. What this does is allows you to swing out the old switch and slide in the new. So go ahead and slide in and secure the new D-Link switch in between the NMD and the 8-port switch using the supplied rack screws. You also want to position the new D-Link switch so that port 1 is close to the bottom of the cabinet where the 4 ports are located. Okay, next you'll want to verify all the connections of the existing setup. This is on page 19 of your IDG, as you can see here. Shows all the port layout of the existing setup. And once you got this confirmed, go ahead and unplug power from the 8-port switch and plug it into the new D-Link switch. At this time, you can migrate all the cables over from the 8-port switch to the new D-Link switch as per 19 of your IDG. So don't call me and say, I don't know what port this plugged into, because it's all stated right here in your installation design guide. Also keep in mind that the new switch is labeled for ease of installation. As you can see in these following photos, ports 1 through 8 is labeled with the NMD and all the colored ports on the cabinet, and then the next photo is 17 through 24 with additional APs. After the completion of the head-end switch cutover, you'll need to verify the cashless operations are back up and running by having the manager on duty perform a debit or gift card transaction. Please note that if there are any issues, just go ahead and try double checking your connections. If the issue still persists, go ahead and call into OneSource so we can resolve this as fast as possible. After verification of the cashless system has been successfully completed, you can remove the 8-port switch all the way and package it up for return shipping. Next will be the installation of the PhiHong POE. You want to unpack the POE and install the provided rack ears. Then mount the POE in the rack next to the DLINK switch. Remove the existing single port POE and connect the power to the new POE Midspan. Make all necessary connections as per the IDG on page 20 and 21. Make sure all the cables are dressed and managed professionally. Next, I'm going to show you a few photos of the PhiHong POE. The first one is the front of the PhiHong. The second one is the side, showing that it's mounted right next to the DLINK switch and the NMD on the left. The PhiHong POE Midspan also requires a special power dongle attached to the Cisco 1252 to achieve the maximum throughput performance. The status light of the Cisco 1252 APs will blink red, blue, green when it's operating in low power mode without the dongle attached. It'll remain solid green when operating in full power mode with the dongle attached. Now for the last section of the installation video, installation of AP1 and the 2 MIMO antennas. These 2 antennas are a little different than the antennas for APs 2 and 3. However, you will want to still keep in mind the primary and secondary coverages and understand why we are installing the antenna where we are, as the IDG suggests. First, we're going to discuss the 5 GHz antenna with the 2 coverages. The 5 GHz antenna should be mounted behind the menu board in the kitchen area to provide the primary and secondary coverages. The next photo will show you the 2 different coverages for the 5 GHz antenna. First is the primary coverage, a minimum of RSSI reading of -70 at the front counter and 30 feet directly in front of the counter or up to any interior obstructions such as a wall. The minimum of -75 RSSI is required in the manager's office to the front counter. The secondary coverage for the 5 GHz is a pathway between the front counter coverage to the side entrance closest to the front counter. Ideally, the 5 GHz wireless back office coverage will allow the HHOT tablet user to walk from the manager's office to the side entrance of the building without losing connectivity. Next, we're going to discuss the 2.4 GHz coverage area for the public Wi-Fi in the lobby area of the restaurant. Location for the AP1 APN antenna should be located so that the antenna has line of sight to the majority of the dining areas. This is typically in the corner of the L-shaped lobbies, and within connection distance to the 5 GHz MIMO antenna being installed in the kitchen area. The kit ships with the 25-foot RF cable extensions for extending the 5 GHz MIMO antenna to the kitchen area. Okay, now that we know the coverage that we are trying to achieve with AP1, we can move forward with the installation of the AP and the MIMO antennas. You want to get a good idea on where to mount the 5 GHz MIMO antenna, as this is most likely going to be the most challenging antenna of the 2 due to numerous dense obstructions behind the front counter. The ideal starting point is flush mounted to the ceiling behind the wall for the menu boards, with line of sight to the manager's office. However, you will want to get your AP installed and powered up first for signal testing and verification. First, perform the Cat5 cable run using plenum rated cable back to the NMD cabinet in accordance to the TIA 568B standard. All hand-built cables should have a professional appearance with the cable jacket securely crimped inside the RJ45 connector for added reliability. You can refer to page 25 of the IDG if you need a refresher on this. If the site has an older Cisco 1121 AP, the existing cable can be repurposed for use. However, the sites with BelAir WCS solution will need to a new cable run because the BelAir will remain in place. So go ahead and unpack and unroll the three 25-foot RF extension cables. All three cables will be run from the proposed mounting location for AP1 to the proposed mounting location for the 5 GHz MIMO antenna located in the kitchen area. It helps if you take all these cables in the back, bundle them together using zip ties. This will need to, you also need to mark one end or each end of one cable to make sure that it's used for the center lead on both the antenna and the AP. You need to avoid running the RF cable near fluorescent lighting or electric motors in the ceiling. Connect the three RF cables to the AP, making sure that the cable you marked is connected to the center of the 5 GHz module ports located on the bottom half of the AP as seen in this photo. Next, go ahead and connect the other end of the RF cables to the antenna, ensuring that the one marked is connected to the center lead of the antenna. Once the RF cable is connected on both ends, power up the AP and verify 5 GHz signal in the primary and the secondary coverage areas. Once everything is confirmed, you'll need to remove the ceiling tile and drill holes in it for the antenna leads. Next, you can mount the antenna using the supplied hardware. The 2.4 GHz MIMO antenna will connect directly to the AP, so it's really important that you mount the AP within connection range of the proposed mounting location of 2.4 GHz MIMO antenna, making sure that the center lead is connected to the center connection at the top of the AP as shown in this photo. So you'll want to remove the ceiling tile and drill holes for the antenna leads, then mount the antenna using the supplied hardware. Okay, once you're completed with the installation, make sure you go to the wireless back office customer acceptance document and make sure all these are checked. At that time, you want to call into OneSource and be connected with the AWS ITAC for test and turn up of the 5 GHz wireless back office solution. Okay, you have now finished the AWS WBO installation video. Please move on to video 3 of 3, RF testing and as-built documentation.